Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Betsy Beaumon, the Chief Transformation Officer at the Social Security Administration. Betsy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
And Betsy, let's start with a question that we've been asking agencies throughout this series this year on high impact service providers. SSA, of course, is one of those HISP agencies. From your perspective, what does it mean for SSA to be a HISP agency and set this high standard for customer experience across the federal government?
For SSA, I think we're high impact in two ways. One, we serve a lot of people. We serve over 70 million people a year and growing. And we're also high impact given who we serve and when we serve them. So we are serving folks from literally birth to death and beyond. And we're serving people at times in really high stress, challenging parts of their lives. So I think we're high impact there too. And that means that we have to be incredibly focused on our customer experience because we need to serve them both with quality and with empathy. And I think that high impact part, that's what that means to me, is just we have a lot of impact on people. And I'm sure it's many people that in fact are impacted by Social Security and what we do and how we do it. So it's a really critical designation.
All right. And tell me a little bit more about your Office of Transformation. I believe that's a fairly new addition to the SSA. Tell me a little bit more about the office's goals, its mission, and what it's been able to do so far.
Yeah, we created the Office of Transformation originally about a year ago with the idea that we needed to transform some of what we're doing, more digital services, meeting people where they are, but also how we're doing it and looking at our internal processes, how we're balancing risk against customer experience. A lot of times government agencies are very thoughtful about the risk that something entails, but we always have to have the customer on the other side of that scale. So in part, the Office of Transformation was formed to look at those things. We took on initially a few really high impact initiatives to try to look at them differently. And more recently, we've really sort of reformed the Office of Transformation to cover not only our customer experience team, but all the way into service design and user experience so that we actually have all of the people that are really focused on listening to our customers and our employee frontline people all in one place and able to really operate as a unit. We are also now responsible for the Social Security Action Plan. That's very public. It's posted on our website, and it really outlines the key things that we're working on as an agency over the coming near and medium term. So putting all of that together it's an important area of transforming still what we do, but also how we do it. And a couple of the deliverables that the Office of Transformation has led include our recent e-signature and document upload capabilities that are now live across the country. And we're working on a couple other exciting things that maybe we could talk about some more.
Yeah, well, I'd love to pick up where you left off there as far as other things in the works. What are you guys looking at in the future?
Yeah, part of there's a vision here, which is really certainly, as I said earlier, we are a customer service organization. And from our commissioner through the entire agency, we're quite clear what our top key goals and objectives are as an agency. So our job in the Office of Transformation is obviously to help make that happen, in part through that customer experience lens. And that really led me some time back to say, one of the most important kind of big picture initiatives we could take on is really an enterprise contact center. So not just what happens when you call our very, very, very busy 800 number, but also what does that look like? How does that feel to a customer across their journey? All of our CX work has really focused a lot on, what is that more end-to-end journey? And what are those pain points? And a lot of those pain points are communication related. And, we need to meet our customers and our employees where they are. And, our work is complex. We have disability processing, not a straightforward, easy process from a regulation standpoint all the way through. So we need to make it as easy as possible and make sure that our front door of SSA across the board, whether you're coming in via phone, whether you're walking into an office, and certainly increasingly using other digital channels, are all very, very simple and consistent. So that area is one that we continue to be extremely involved in and driving across the agency. I mentioned the work that we've been doing on e-signature and being able to do much more digital document management. During the pandemic, our offices found they were just inundated with mail, that they really had trouble processing at that time because you didn't have people in the office to get it. And literally our frontline managers came in during the pandemic to open and process mail, even when, for all the health reasons, offices were closed. So one, I think that shows you the grit of our staff and how much they care about the mission. But I think it also became very clear we need some better ways to do this. Plus, we have customers themselves saying, can't I just do this online? Not everybody, but for those who want to do that, we need to be able to meet that moment. So these are areas we're working on a lot, really looking at our digital front-facing applications first. And SSA is starting to organize more around a product operating model where our teams have more and more autonomy. This is stuff that the Office of Transformation sort of prototyped a little bit and piloted last year. And now we can see where this can go to its next incarnation, where our team, with all of our CX and UX, really are the center of excellence on design and experience, and then working with product managers, developers, and of course, all of our functional experts inside the agency.
Yeah, what I'm hearing from this digital push is that this is beneficial to, of course, the customers that SSA has, but also the employees that SSA has, that, it's improving their work streams a lot, it's streamlining things a lot more. It's, reducing potentially backlogs. It seems like there's a real win-win here in this digital push.
I think you put that really well, Joy, with the win-win. That is a lot of what we look at, because there have been solutions in the past and some that we still are living with that were good for the customer, but then added a bunch of work to our really, really, really busy, overstretched field staff. That is not a win-win. So we have to keep looking at these things that really do help both groups. And the challenge we have as an agency is we are serving more customers than ever, and we have our lowest staffing in over 50 years. So those two things together tell you we have to not only go more digital, but also really look at the processes that happen internally. And this is an exciting part of service design, where you really take the customer and employee journeys both, map them to what are the business processes today and where should we be going with those. And all of that, of course, needs to then connect up to the systems. I think we maybe have had a tendency in the past to think, technology can solve X problem, but it doesn't solve it unless you put all the other pieces together. It's a great tool. And, we live with a lot of old technology, especially for our field folks. And, we have to fix that.
Yeah, and Betsy, circling back to a point you made earlier about how this Office of Transformation, they oversee the customer experience side of things, the user experience side of things. Can you tell me a little bit more about that latter category, the user experience, and how SSA is incorporating more real-time feedback from customers and using that to, further improve, further iterate the processes and the technology that you've been talking about?
We've had a really active user experience team for some time. It's been part of our CIO's office, really connected to the tech side of the house, doing some important testing, having a lot of leadership in the federal government around accessibility, which is a very important topic to me as well. I think we have the opportunity now to continue to pull them further forward in the process. They have been synced up at some level with our CX team and some of our service designers who, among other things, have done an amazing job on the front-facing SSA.gov website. Really, a year or so ago, launching a much improved front door on the web. I think that's a really great example of what you're asking about. How do you incorporate user-centered design, constant feedback, so that you can improve not only the user interface, but what is the flow? What is their actual experience as they go through? And the more we are also thinking about equity and accessibility from the very, very, very beginning, even in our CX work that feeds all of this is critical. And I hope our Office of Transformation can now be successful in making that flow super connected, so that what we hear and what we're mapping in a journey in the CX world then really takes direct flight through our UX team and through our service designers. It's critical that we keep going towards simplicity for everyone. It's funny, right? People sometimes forget that in their daily life, they on their mobile phone, they use and are delighted by applications that are really to the point, very streamlined, very intuitive. You don't need a user manual. And, we've got to get closer to that. We're doing, as I said, some very complex things at SSA. I mean, our services, the regulations that govern us are quite complicated. At the same time, we need to make that user experience as simple and streamlined as possible.
All right. Well, Betsy, lots of great points there. We're going to get back to it in a moment here. We're going to take a quick break. My guest today is Betsy Beaumon, the Chief Transformation Officer at the Social Security Administration. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman, on excellent, equitable, and secure customer experience, a closer look at high-impact service providers, sponsored by Carasoft on Federal News Network. Welcome back to Excellent, Equitable, and Secure Customer Experience, a closer look at high-impact service providers, sponsored by Carasoft on Federal News Network. My guest today is Betsy Beaumon, the Chief Transformation Officer at the Social Security Administration. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman. And Betsy, picking up where we left off, you were talking about accessibility, and of course, that's a piece of every agency's CX agenda, but I imagine for SSA that is of particular focus, considering the customers that you have. Can you tell me a little bit more about what SSA is doing on that accessibility piece?
Accessibility, as you say, is critical. And coming from the private sector, as I've done, I've worked in accessibility for over 15 years. And to me, I still sometimes see federal agencies really wrapped up in 508 compliance. And a compliance lens, I mean, that's a good start, but we need to kind of push, and again, I'm answering in this stage across the federal government toward more of a user experience kind of mode. And what do our users really need? And to your point, at SSA, we are serving folks that absolutely require accessible experiences. And I mean, I believe, given our customer base, that we should be the most accessible agency in the federal government. And we're already quite good. The team has done a lot of great work over the years. I think we can do even better by making sure that our personas of people with disabilities are robust and multiple. And I think we can then carry that through even more than we have been through all of our work. And that gets to some of the discussion about simplicity as well for people with intellectual disabilities, who are often forgotten or left out of the disability discussion. We need to be thinking about that as part of the user base, so that we don't, for example, overwhelm them with legalese. Like, we're taking a look at at all of the wording in our notices. That's a great example of an initiative that we are driving, that both our CX and UX teams are directly involved in. Our notices are hard for lawyers to understand. Imagine receiving that. Imagine your grandmother receiving that. Imagine somebody with an intellectual disability receiving that. I mean, it's kind of a non-starter if some of the lawyers can't even figure out what that all means. So that's an example of where we are taking a look that is a usability. It's a customer experience issue, but it is very much also an accessibility and an equity issue. How we send those to people. We send them via mail. For people who are unhoused, that's a challenge. So that's another digitization effort, is so that we have the option of more of them to go email, text, and also maybe you just get texted a link. So there's lots of different things we're thinking about from an accessibility and overall equity standpoint to really meet people where they are.
Yeah, that's so critical to this whole mission here. To circle back to something we were talking about in the first segment here, Betsy, we were talking a little bit about how what's good for the agency employees is good for the customers and vice versa, that they are inextricably two halves of the same coin, that, you know, if you empower the SSA employees to do the work, then that translates into better experiences for the customers. You were also saying kind of this tension between more customers than ever and this lowest staffing, you know, historically lowest staffing. Can you tell me a little bit more about what SSA is doing and can do to improve that experience for the SSA workforce, which then translates into better experience for those customers?
Yeah, I'm really proud of the work that the whole team has been doing, and the whole SSA team in the past 9 months, really heavily with influence through the leadership of our Commissioner O'Malley, to really listen to our frontline employees. We can't just talk about them or have someone who maybe was a frontline employee 10 years ago that's now at headquarters. That's not good enough. We have to listen to the people who are doing the work today. So I think listening is a huge, it all starts from listening. And then the solutions, some of them are really short term. A lot of what we've done in our security stat work is listening and saying, you know what? This thing could be solved without a giant IT project. This item could be solved by just getting the right groups in a room and talking through the nuances of, okay, if we change this wording or we change this approach. Some of them are regulatory, some of them are sub-regulatory changes that again are good for customers, but also drastically reduce different workloads. We've done a lot of work around the 800 number, for example, saying, why do people call the 800 number? We worked with the US Digital Service and multiple parts of our team to answer that question. And in answering that question in a really sophisticated way, as you dig into the data, we must be data driven, it started to show us, I mean, there's obviously a big other category that we're now, diving into more in terms of really using AI and other tools to look at call transcripts to understand what really were the reasons people called. Sometimes it's multiple. But we're able to start looking at those in pie charts and saying, okay, let's knock off some of the big ones so that we actually hopefully can start getting less calls about confusion about notices. That's a great example. A whole bunch of people call because they just don't understand the thing we sent them. That's obviously driving a ton more work to our field just because people have more questions. And then frankly, they have to decipher them sometimes. So that's another example where there is this great synergy with the frontline employees and the customers. I think finally, again, all of this is about people, process, policy, and technology. I gave a couple examples where there are both policy items, there are, just kind of common sense things like a 5-page notice to say one thing is probably going to be confusing. And our customers tell us that when we do our CX work. It's just, we got to look at all of those pieces across the board. The final one, the technology, though, our frontline staff need to use way too many applications to get their job done. And a lot of that is legacy, and our CIO and the entire organization is really looking to say, how can we simplify that? Again, it's hard. It's a hard job. Let's not make it harder. so there's definite focus on how we simplify that sort of dashboard of applications for our frontline staff.
Yeah, and Betsy, you hit on something that I think is really important to underscore. What's been perhaps a little elusive sometimes with these conversations with CX is that return on investment. And I think you hit the nail on the head here by saying, it's fewer calls from the customers asking, where am I in the queue? How long do I have to wait for this service? And, that's something that neither the customers want nor the employees want, to have to deal with this, 5 times, 10 times, however many times it takes. Us a serious time savings if you can get it done, in one call or no calls, if it's, seamlessly done
Yes.
first time around. Can you explore that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to phone calls, we obviously measure things like the average speed to answer and how long, what's the handle time of a call. But we are also driving more and more toward first call resolution. So whether it's a call, a visit, how can we handle, again, basic questions through technology that don't really need a human to answer? How can we meet folks where they are? If they are digitally oriented, great, let's make it so that we can serve them digitally, so that the people who do need a person to help them get to that person. So there, there's a lot of pieces to it, but I think part of it is, well, I wish I could say there was a magic bullet, but the answer is all of the above, right? You have to decrease the amount of stuff coming in, and you have to really look at some of those business processes that frankly may have been created around the paper form world. And now that we are digitizing, we have this opportunity that we can take great advantage of to say, could we organize some of our work differently? Could we streamline, but also can we fundamentally change how we share workloads? Our judges on the hearing side of the house have been for some time now starting to share their workloads nationally, and it has really helped to drop down our backlog of cases awaiting judges. So, I mean, and again, this is on our website. You can see some of the progress on some of these key goals that we have. I think that's an answer. It's not the only answer. They've done a bunch of things to make sure that those judges have, and the staff that work on cases have tools. But part of it is rethinking how they do their work. Another example gets into everybody's favorite topic of AI. We've been doing sort of a older AI version of activity around our disability cases that we are expanding. And that is basically using a tool that helps go through what is often now over 1,000 pages of a case file to say, what are those things that are most likely to qualify somebody for our benefits? And let's at least help our humans have a place to go look, so they don't have to read 1,000 pages. Technology can read 1,000 pages way faster than a human can and figure out where to at least start the search. And I think we can continue to have the capability to have tools to help our staff do their jobs easier.
All right. And finally, Betsy, I did want to bring up a little bit more about Security Stat. This is a project that is something that Commissioner O'Malley is quite passionate about. I've heard him speak a number of times about it. For folks who are a little less familiar about it, what is Security Stat and what's the future of that for a driver of CX at SSA?
It is, in some ways, you would say it's just really good ways to manage. But Security Stat came out of work originally in New York, that when our commissioner was mayor of Baltimore, he took on and really took it to a new level for the city, and then also brought it with him to the state of Maryland, and now to Social Security, which is why it's called Security Stat. It's not about cybersecurity, it's about Social Security. And, in that process, we are looking at data every time. And I guess I should step back and say, we have topics, we have 8 different topics, and they each come up every 2 weeks. So we have essentially a double header each Monday and Tuesday. And so 2 topics on a Monday, 2 topics on a Tuesday, another 2 topics the following week, another 2 topics the following week, and then that whole cycle repeats. So what I love about it is, one, it is completely across the agency. So myself and all of our other deputy commissioners are sitting around a horseshoe, and the operational groups or others that are leading, it's not as much a presentation as leading a discussion. So I think that's an important part of it, is when it starts to just feel like, somebody standing there presenting, and that's not the spirit of this. The spirit is to ask questions, to then in the room or in the follow-up room, that's part of the process, is after the meeting, making sure that there is somebody taking down the actions that have popped up and really talking them through and being clear who's lead, how are we going to get this solved? Are we going to report back again in 2 weeks, or is this something complicated that takes 4 weeks? Now, when I'm talking in the weeks level, this is not something that is often the timescale in the federal government, and it needs to be. So let's make the easy things easy, get them done fast, measure the improvements. So I mentioned, for example, our 800 number call data. We didn't just measure all that and then we're dropping it. We're actually following up to see, where is that going? Is that getting better? Are the things we're changing making a market change? In many of our metrics, we're now starting to see that they are. So, one of the commissioner's favorite lines with anybody talking is, whatever metric didn't come down, we drove it down. And I think it's combined action, it's feedback loops, it's also accountability, right? If somebody is supposed to go do an action and it doesn't get done, it's going to be really, really clear. No, you can't kind of just assume people are going to forget, because there's a steady stream of follow-up. And we're going to keep perfecting it. It's still evolving as to how we work with it, with our action plan that I mentioned earlier. Again, you'll see that on our website in the security stat section. This is more and more how we're going to look at more of these longer term items. So instead of just, hey, can you fix this thing in 2 weeks? It's very much stuff that there's no way to get done in 2 or 4 weeks, but what is the progress we're making? How are we connecting? A lot of these things connect to each other. So again, my team will have a key role in making sure that we connect those dots, so that if, oftentimes you'll see in a large organization, a product initiative over here and a product initiative over here be on different schedules. We have to connect those. And security stat, again, is continuing to evolve into more of that place where some of those dots can get connected.
All right. Well, Betsy, lots of great stuff here. I think we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks so much for your time. Thanks again to today's guest, Betsy Beaumon, the Chief Transformation Officer at the Social Security Administration. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman, and you're listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search HISP. That's HISP.